What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we return with Keith of the Almighty Tanith. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for coming back on the show, man.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Like at St. Vitus, I can't remember if it was 2017 or 2018, but it was a good time.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to remember the with the COVID years put in there. It kind of like when you're looking at the past, like 2 years felt like 4 years, and 4 years felt like 2 years, and so yeah, it's I whenever that was.
Yeah, the side effect of COVID, as well as doing like 1,700, and that's not an exaggeration, like 1,700 interviews since then,
Whoa.
will make you definitely kind of destroy the calendar in your mind a little bit.
Yes, indeed.
Yep. But
Oh, that's
it's
crazy, man.
yeah, right. It's been a lot. But it's so awesome to have you here. Your new album Voyage is absolutely awesome. Thank you for giving us another fantastic album. For people who haven't heard the full-length album yet though, do you feel that the first singles that we heard so far, such as Snow Tiger and Olympus by Dawn, is a good representation of this whole album in a way, or is that just the tip of the iceberg of what's to come?
That maybe the answer is a little bit of both of that. I think they are good representative. If you're going to pick a couple, I think those are two that are good to have. But there are some other tracks like have some odd meter songs, and there's a couple songs that are in gasp major keys, and they have a little bit different sound to them that you usually don't hear, that hard rock or metal bands play. Um, but uh, but yeah, I would say, I think Snow Tiger, kind of represents a little bit of the heavier side, and then Olympus is kind of a little more the middle of the road kind of feel for the band. And so yeah, I mean, if I was going to pick two songs to represent the album, that's the two I'd pick.
Was Voyage intended to kind of be like a continuation, or as I like to say, the sequel to In Another Time in a way, or was the goal for this album to kind of step into new uncharted territory and be like a new beginning for Tanith in a way?
It's I think it's kind of a continuation. I don't think there's anything that's like drastically like there's been like a left turn at the light with the band, and it's a new kind of thing. It's a continuation. We recorded it in the same studio. We recorded it the same way. A lot of it, we kind of wanted to keep that continuity between the first and the second record. So I think it's just kind of a continuation. I think maybe we challenge ourselves to play a little more, to come up with some more challenging parts, possibly. But I mean, I think people that like the first record are gonna like the second record. It's similar in that vein.
Definitely, I definitely wouldn't. You're like the left turn at the red light. That's a good analogy right there. Is it, is there at all though like a preconceived vision of what you want a song or an album for that matter to sound like, or is your songwriting process rather more experimental and rather improvisational?
Well, for the most part, most of the songs come from Russ, and they just come from like like he'll whatever he's doing, he says like songs just kind of like riffs or some lyrics just kind of come into his mind, and then he just starts putting it down. And so it's more about kind of what his process is. Once he'll send like demos out, and then we all have input, and and can say, well, we might want to put an extra bar here or put an extra verse here or whatever. But the but as far it, I forgot what the actual question was now.
If there was like a preconceived vision behind the making of an album,
The what? What's that?
if there was like a preconceived vision behind the making of an album.
No. So no, I think it's no, it's I think it's more just whatever pops into Russ' mind, and Russ thinks is right for the band, and so that's kind of where things go. It's not like we all sit around, we're going to make this type of record. It's just like we start with those, and then it just kind of comes out the way it does.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we mentioned this before in our last interview, but being that you've all played in different projects before, Russ obviously with Satan and Blind Fury and Pariah, but you with your previous projects such as Empire of Light, and Electric Trio and whatnot, like, does this almost were your different projects kind of like combining into one for the making of Tanith? Were you kind of like bringing in snippets of each project to make one, or were you all trying to step into new territory that you haven't explored with any project you've been involved with?
For me, it was kind of a different kind of thing. I'm from Texas, and I've played a lot of like blue. Like in addition, I've always played rock. I grew up with rock, listening to Kiss and Rush and all that stuff. But once I started working, being a professional musician, I've done all kinds of gigs. So you whether it be country, blues, pop, rock, whatever there is. And so I had like to bring something new to this. I mean, I had to challenge myself, and it was kind of a different vocabulary than what I normally do. I think with Russ, it was, that's kind of what he does, since it's kind of the songs kind of start with him. But yeah. I mean, you bring what you've learned all along the way in your life. That's always gonna, I'm gonna play what I'm gonna play. But it's like I'll hear things that I wouldn't necessarily in other projects think to play. Like that music would make me think to play this certain pattern or whatnot. And so when I joined Tanith, like, I'm kind of hearing this thing now. I have to figure out what I'm hearing. So yeah, you bring all the little pieces along the way. But like with Tanith, it's you put them together in a different way.
Yeah. Well, one big difference I've noticed between In Another Time and Voyage is that back in Another Time, you had, pun intended there, you had 4 members, but now you guys are performing as a trio. And I was just like wondering if maybe performing as a trio now, if that maybe opened up new ideas or maybe created some new elements, because I've always said that one extra member going from a trio to a 4-piece could make a drastic difference instrumentally or any songwriting in general.
Yeah, it ended up being I mean, there's a whole story to that. That the day before we were to go into the studio and record, Charlie Newton, our former guitar player, decided it was in his best interest to not continue with the band. So we went into that like it was going to be a 4-piece, and all of a sudden we had the studio booked and we were all ready to go, and we didn't have one player. So we can't play the music as a trio, and so while we were in the studio, Russ ended up playing both parts. And so you'll hear 2 guitars, and then for some of the stuff, it's like a kind of a call and response, like solo parts and that kind of thing. We needed to have he wanted to have a different voice play the response to maybe to his solo, and we brought in Andy Blacksugar from he's in Blondie, and he happened to be off the road, and so. He came in. He's an old friend of mine. We used to play in a band together, and so he supplied the second guitar parts. And so now, like when we play our show in a couple nights, we're gonna have another guitar player with us.
Okay.
And Dino Frienmuth from the band Nature. He's going to play with us, and so it's going to be a 4-piece in the videos and stuff, and it's showing us three because it was us 3 that were.
So you fooled me.
But we can't play the music only as a 3-piece. There's too many guitar parts that would be lost.
Yeah, I was about to say, actually, I've noticed that too, watching the music videos and like hearing the album, and like I really went into it thinking that like you guys were just a Costa 3-piece. I was like, damn, that's some heavy guitars. I'm like, what kind of fucking pedals is Russ using or something like that? You shouldn't have. That's almost kind of like a good little prank in a way. So.
Well, we did in the Snow Tiger video. There was some parts of Andy cutting his solo in that song, and but the Olympus video is a trio, and then we'll have another video called Flame that comes out on Friday, the same day as the record, and that's all. You'll see us as a trio playing that, but we'll never play live as a trio. It's yeah, you got to have both guitar players.
Of course, never say never though. Never say never. You never know when that second guitar player could have a Spinal Tap moment.
Right. Well, I mean, that could be any of us, though.
Yeah.
When you're bringing up Spinal Tap, it's always the drummer that ends up disappearing.
Which is so messed up because drummers are always the hardest one to find. Isn't like the drummer is always the most prolific one in the band.
All right. Well, all those people looking for a drummer, you can give me a call, and if I got time, I'll play with you.
You probably just caused your phone to be bombarded. You're gonna have your phone being bombarded now. You might thoroughly regret saying that on this interview. But as a drummer, have you always needed to? And this could go for Tanith or any project you've been involved with. But have you always preferred to have music already written before you lay down your parts in a way, or has there ever been a time where you had a whole drum pattern that maybe the band could write over?
I've done it I mean, I've been doing this a long time. So, and I've done it all kinds of ways. I mean, I've had like guys that, can you just play me some different drum beats and see if that, like sometimes like hearing a drum beat will make you, think of some sort of guitar riff or, something that you might not think of if you're just sitting, on your couch with acoustic guitar strumming along. But I mean, it's easier for me to come up with a drum beat if there's music already, if there's a guitar riff or some sort of chord progression, whatnot. I can generally come up with drum parts to that pretty quick, but it really work however it needs to work for whatever project it is. Then that's what will happen. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to talk crap about everybody, but like if you get music presented to you and there's no drums on it, you could be honest. How off time is it or off rhythm is it sometimes before there's any drum pattern to lay down?
Well, it depends. I mean, these days, people will, everyone has Pro Tools. Everybody can cut it to a click or a lot of people will use a drum loop to record. That's primarily what happens, is that people will use like a drum loop or like some sort of drum program, like a simple drum programming thing. So everything's, and if they use that, then everything's pretty close to in time. And then I just take out the pre-recorded stuff and put in my own beat. But I mean, if there's no click, it can be hard to play with if it's just a guy playing with the part. And usually in that case, we'll make their part in time, then record drums to that, and then have them re-record the guitar part to the drums in time.
A lot of people have maybe stupidly said that like drums don't have emotion behind it because there's no melody behind it. But when I listen to every drummer, whether it will go from John Bonham to Stuart Copeland to Mike Portnoy to every death metal drummer I've seen, like there seems to be a lot of emotion channeled into that. And is it fair to say that maybe different patterns or different techniques channel a different energy or channel a different emotion on your part as well?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like that's how a drummer can make a difference in the song. It's like you can play lightly, you can play heavily, and John Bonham's a good example. They played all different kinds of music, and and depending on what they're doing, it's that lends. If you're playing super heavy and super loud, then the band's gonna feel big, and if you're like played back and or if you want to play with brushes or that kind of thing, that it's all part of creating the mood. And if the drums aren't supplying the right kind of feeling for the song, it can kind of kill the song.
Of course.
So so it's like I don't know if anyone saying that there's no emotion or coming from the back of the band, I think they're kind of crazy.
Yeah, I know. The very famous saying too, if your drummer sucks, your band sucks. So
yeah, that can be true. Yeah,
no pressure at all, but Yeah. But
I'm used to that by now.
um, is there though a similar energy at all to playing live as to playing like in your practice space or in a studio? Because in the end, you are kind of, I always get, that it's a very different approach from like a guitar player or a singer because like they have to move around more on stage than when they're in the studio and whatever. But with the drums, you're looking at the same toms, the same snare, the same cymbals, everything. So being that there's a similar perspective, does that at all maybe create a similar energy to playing live as you do when you're in the studio or a practice space, or is playing live and the studio still separate mindsets altogether?
It's I would like to think it's the same, but I know when I'm playing live and I'm playing, and like when I'm in here in my studio, like I generally know how to play to this studio, and I know what will feel loud coming through the speakers once it's recorded, or what how that will feel. But when you play live and you've got a big PA and you got a crowd, I always end up playing louder, playing harder, and it's kind of a different thing because you think if you're in here playing in a controlled a controlled environment, I can have it cranked up and it can sound loud in my headphones, but I'm not like playing as loud. And so when you start playing faster and it affects, it's just physically, it feels, you're like, oh, I'm playing louder and this is a fast tempo. It because the more movement, it's like, it feels like, oh, I got to like kind of chase it. It's like, I guess I'm not really making much sense, but
You
it's I don't know what the best way to put this is. Something that feels like a normal tempo in the studio will feel like it's super fast live because I'm playing louder. I'm feeling the energy, and it's like there's more motion, and so it's going by faster.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, you made a lot of sense because I'd almost think it's almost like instinct if you're playing live because you're hearing the audience talking and there's again like a PA involved. You were probably, if there were bands playing before you, maybe your ears are already ringing. So it almost seems like instinctively you just play louder in a live environment where maybe it's like almost in a way like, for lack of better words, a discomfort thing in a way. You're in your studio, you're in your own like cave. You can kind of do whatever you want, but live maybe there's like some sort of adjustment that needs to happen.
And everything, and it all sounds different. It can all everything. Like I can have my drum set in here, and I got it all dialed in perfect. And you go out and when you put it in a in any club or any theater bar or whatever it is, and it's going to sound different. The sound coming out of your monitors or your in ears, the way it's mic'd, the drums take on the personality of the room that they're in, and so it's a different vibe live than it is in the studio.
Yeah, definitely. One advantage is, so God forbid you break a stick, you could just pick up another one. You're a guitar player and you break a string, oh God help you.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a tough one for sure.
Yep. Just don't go.
As long as we're not breaking a snare head or a kick drum head, everything can be good. Everything's fine.
I was at a death metal show the other day. I won't say which band it was. But they had to stop in the song due to technical difficulties. And the guy's triggers was just so hard. I saw it happen too. Because he was doing like freaking double bass up the wazoo, and you just saw the explode under his feet. You thought somebody put like a landmine underneath his kit or something like that.
And so it was the kick drum head.
Yeah, yeah. You just
Split.
he was going and then like so.
Man, and that's like, like I guess if you're touring a lot, then maybe you have an extra kick drum head. But that's generally the last thing that's going to break. But when it does, it's just like, what do? You got to hope that maybe there's another band on the bill that will let you use that. Or I've seen guys, it's never happened to me, but like they'll take off the floor tom head and tape it to the torn kick drum head, anything to get through the gig. Because, especially a rock gig, with no kick drum, it's just like you just can't do it.
Yeah, I've always said that a floor tom or the bass drum is what happens when a bad person is reincarnated. That they're reincarnated as that. So, and
interesting take.
yep. And yeah, and again, the floor tom breaks, or if you have I'm sorry, the pedals break, or if you have a Spinal Tap moment. Those are the two worst things that could happen with the drummer. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today, for another fantastic Tanith album. I can't wait for the rest of the world to hear this. Is there just anything else that you'd like to promote for the release of Voyage in terms of tours, or what else we could be expecting for Tanith in the future, if you're allowed to say at this very moment, of course?
Yeah, we're looking at what our options are. There are some options like that we're perusing. But it's basically like this week and leading up to this week with our show at St. Vitus on Thursday, and then like doing press and for the record coming out. It's all been about that. Once we get past Friday, Russ heads back to England on Monday, and so we're going to take over the weekend. Like okay, all this stuff is behind us. Now let's discuss like what these offers are we have to go out on the road, if that's going to be feasible. What areas do we want to go to, and then we'll kind of take the future from there. But like right now, it's just been all about prepping to get to get ready for these shows.
Of course.
Or one show. Yeah.
Of course. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Tanith. Be sure to check out Voyage, coming out very soon. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Alex.